Curtis. We should be live here on the Tubes of You.
I feel pretty live.
Yeah, well, you are.
Lively.
Yes.
Coffee.
Yes, very good. Very good. Here, there you go. Look at that. There's just
we could have a whole discussion about coffee today, and
Yes.
just how it's really an awful drink. But then we might lose people that not like that,
Yeah, no,
But, it is
I don't
coffee.
think that's part of part of something that I've had on my mind to do for a long time is to start a coffee brand. So we definitely don't want to downplay
Yeah.
coffee on this channel.
Well, so like I've always actually believed, I tried to convince some guys to do this that I was working with at one point. When I would go in and consult with churches, I
Mhm.
always believed that we should make coasters that said no food or drink in the sound booth, so that everybody had someplace to put their coffee in the sound booth. I always wanted to make that. I almost convinced them to make it at one point. We were doing some conferences and stuff. And
That's
I was like, I
funny.
just want to give away coasters that say no food and drink so that everybody has someplace to put their drink, I mean, because you got to
Exactly.
have someplace to put it, right?
Well, of course.
So,
That's funny. All right, I'm adjusting your gain just a little bit. Trying to get this.
I was feeling pretty boisterous right there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I think that's good. All right. Hey, if you're joining us for the first time, I'm Dave Curley, one of the two church media creators. Sitting over here, well, he's over here, is Curtis James. He is a church media creator as well. He's been formally a church media creator for about 30 years. I've been just a creator for about 30-ish years, something like that. Curtis is Curtis. You're multifaceted in that you are like you're my best friend. You're my family pastor. You're my counselor, a mentor in a lot of ways, a part-time worship leader or worship minister, for me and stuff.
I'm also your game master too. Don't forget
Yes, you're my
that.
yes, you're my game master. We have our own little role playing game, D&D style game between me and Curtis and our pastor and our worship pastor, and a couple other guys that are in our family ministry. And
Y'all never knew Dave was a superhero.
yeah, I am a superhero and
He is.
not a very good one. Let's see.
He's had his moments. Let's just put
Yeah,
it that way.
I've had my moments. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I haven't played back in like 5th and 6th grade, 7th grade and stuff. We used to play Dungeons and Dragons during lunch and stuff. And a couple of guys had books and we would do stuff, but mainly we would I would do a lo-fi version of what you have done for us. We would sit down with graph paper and draw out a map and stuff, kind of work, put up your binder, so the guys can't see you, and kind of walk everybody through it and stuff. And we could do a campaign during a 20-minute lunch, which was really cool. And that was a lot of fun. Then I grew up and literally never thought about it until you said,
Yeah.
"Hey guys, I have
Stopped
an
having
idea."
fun.
Yes,
Stopped
my
having
childhood
fun.
went away.
All there was to it. So
That's
became a
funny.
responsible adult. Ha ha.
Let's see here. We're if you are just joining us, we are back. It's been, I don't know. I think the last time I live streamed actually wasn't. I mean, I've played around just a little bit, just testing things. But the last thing that I did, of consequence on this channel, was with the guy who. Oh gosh, what was it called? Live Pigeon. The guy that created Live Pigeon, which is a service that lets you go live without actually being live. It's like you could record like a live show, or like your church service or something like that, and then put it up, and then it will stream it live, from the recording at a predetermined time, which is really cool, especially if you have like bandwidth issues or something. But that was really like the last thing I did on here, and that was probably October of 2020. A lot of life changes for me, Curtis. You've been holding my hand through the life changes over the last couple of years. Family dynamics have changed a lot. So I've been in a content creation funk, I guess, for a while I've tried to change up things in life. But I'm really glad to be back. And today, Curtis and I were talking. We've been wanting to get the live show going again, and then start the entire content creation process fully again. And so we decided the best thing to do is to just get started, do it, and let's use this time to kind of interview each other a little bit while I'm like trying to get vMix Social working and get the comments coming in and stuff like that. And I literally have no idea if anybody is watching. It'd be interesting to find out. Let's see, where's my? I got to go to the live tab here. Curtis, why don't you just real quick introduce yourself to the audience, to everyone who's watching. We've got a decent-sized audience for this channel, about 30,000 people. I don't think there's going to be 30,000 people here, so you can just act like you're talking to just one or two normal people.
Okay, for the normal people. Now, for the abnormal people, we'll have a different kind of conversation. But,
right.
So my name is Curtis James. I'm a minister. I've been in ministry for a long, long time because I have gray. I don't have as much gray as Dave because, he's old. But I've worked in all different kinds of ministry.
Okay? You have to be nice. Yeah. I'm your elder now.
Old.
Okay?
Old. That's old. And until I get there, I don't really get caught up on ages. But anyway, so I've been in ministry for a long time. I've done a lot of different kinds of ministry, and I just believe that I want to be equipped and prepared to do any ministry that's necessary to be done at any moment. And so I really enjoy doing that. From a technology standpoint, I've been working in church technology since I was a teenager, and have an undergraduate minor in telecommunications, a major in music. I have a master's degree in Christian studies. So I've had extensive experience in worship leadership, but also in the audiovisual world for 10 years. I had a parachurch ministry where I worked with over 500 churches on their technology around the U.S., really around the world, but primarily here in the States. And so I've worked with a lot of different settings. So my background is I grew up in a really large church, and we had endless amounts of resources available to us. And what happened to me was, as a 17-year-old, they took me into a room. We were about to go on a mission trip choir tour to Spain. And they took me into a room, and they said, we really need you to kind of oversee our AV, even though I was also a performer. And they said, so we need you to choose the equipment. They just took me into a room with just like 30 or 40 soundboards and said, just pick the equipment you need. And they took me into another room, and it was full of speakers and amplifiers and all these different kinds of things. And so I had some really extensive experience early on. And then I went to college. And when I went to college at Oklahoma Baptist University, the first church I started going to was a church of about 60 people. And they didn't have closets of equipment. In fact, the equipment they had was realistic Radio Shack equipment, the big tall speakers that had the multiple cones and the little super tweeters over the top. And I realized real fast that the average church in the United States has less than 100 people coming. And so my heart was that I believed that we could do great work in churches that weren't mega churches, that we could do really powerful work and effective things from an audio visual standpoint in every normal church. And so I began working with churches then, and I have ever since. I've taught technology for worship at Southwestern Seminary, at the college, Texas Baptist College there. I've taught conferences. If any of y'all have attended or been a part of the Innovate Praise conferences that went on for several years here in Texas, that was my event, and as well as multiple training events around the country. And so I've just got a lot of AV junk all piled up in my head. A lot of it's useless knowledge, but my focus always leans and tends toward what God is trying to do in these ministries. As a matter of fact, when I was thinking about today, I was thinking about 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Verse 4, verse 7, he's talking throughout this chapter about, being aware and being on guard and being ready for what God's called you to. And in verse 10, it says, just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve others as good stewards of the varied grace of God. And I think, to me, like, that's the key of what we're talking about here. If you're watching this, then hopefully that means you're using your talents and skills to run AV equipment. And so it's an instrument in worship, just like a keyboard, just like a bass guitar or drums or whatever. You're operating a piece of equipment in worship just like they are. And so the only difference is your piece of equipment can actually ruin everything that's going on all at once, and they can only mess up one part. And so I believe that we use our skills and talents, and we want to help you extend that and grow and become more effective at times. And so that's kind of my heart for what we're doing here. Is I want to see people using their talents and growing in them, because the worst thing we can ever do is think we know everything, because then we just become useless. And so that's kind of my focus and my heart for us here in this group, is that we will grow and learn from each other, because none of us know it all. But between all of us, God's given an immense amount of resource here, and we can work together and do things, and they don't have to cost $1 million,
Yeah, I do. I love that. That's like one of the biggest things that has been on my heart, I guess, like from the beginning when I started this journey, I guess, for real, maybe. I mean, I was helping my dad in 1978. He was running sound, and it was literally a desk inside the church office that had a half mirrored window looking sideways into the sanctuary. Like
1978 means he's old, guys, just letting you all know.
Big time. And there was this little typing desk there, and it had a tape recorder on it, and it had one of these Shure microphone mixers that looked like a little cigar box, and had the 4 knobs and a master, and a little VU meter, that
which was actually a really good piece of equipment. That was a really well built piece of equipment,
And people still use them. They go for a premium on eBay sometimes. They were these little bulletproof things. They were bulletproof, kind of like your Shure SM58 and 57 microphones are. But I remember, him telling me we had a boom microphone going to the piano, and then the microphone up on the pulpit. And sitting there, we could see, the pulpit, in profile, and the piano right here, and then kind of the area right in front of the stage was like right in front of us, where the invitation happened and the offertory takes place and all that stuff, and then the congregation. So you're kind of sitting sideways. There was the only mixing, or the only reference was like a little speaker inside, there that you could hear. You had nothing in there, and I remember standing there with my dad and hitting record on the thing and helping him duplicate tapes and do stuff like that way back then. But it wasn't
high-speed
until
dubbing, baby.
Yeah, it wasn't until I don't know, 97, 98 ish, 98 maybe, 99, something like that, when I was really getting back into video, and we were doing podcasting at our church. There was nothing to podcast to. We were recording our audio at church, and then posting it up on a website, or on the church's website, where there would just be links and you could hit play and it would just start playing. Or you would download it, or it'd open up a browser and then play, that kind of a thing. And I started recording the services, video-wise. I even took, I wanted to get good audio, so I had a Hi8 Sony camcorder, and then I got a Digital 8, so it was digital but using the Hi8 tapes, and they were the Hi8 tapes are forward compatible, backward compatible, whatever, into those things. And they used FireWire, so you could transfer it to the computer cleanly. And I took, we had the personal PA system. Do you remember those, Curtis?
Oh, yeah.
The for the hearing impaired, it's a little transmitter. There's a transmitter in the box, a little radio transmitter, and then you had these little boxes with earbuds. And someone who, an elderly person would come in, pick theirs up. Theirs was number 2, and go sit down, and they had a clean feed coming in so they could hear it. I took one of those and ran it into the mic input on my thing, and I changed it from being a mic input to a line input so that I could have, relatively clean audio without a whole lot of clipping and stuff. And that's kind of where it all started. And at some point, I got asked to go on a mission trip to Romania to work with a gal there's about my age who had a ministry. She was doing backyard Bible clubs before they were really called Backyard Bible Club, or they were, but she didn't know about it. She was just doing it herself. She eventually, when we got there, she was beginning to connect with Child Evangelism Fellowship and actually get materials and all kinds of stuff. But she would go to the orphanages and the gypsy villages and would do Backyard Bible Club. Like, on Tuesday, she's in this gypsy village, and everybody comes, right around in somebody's yard and does it. And then, the next night she would do one after dinner at a orphanage. And so I was there to document that and kind of tell that story. One of the things I saw then was that that country at that time, it was only 10 years, it was 99. So in 89, the Ceausescu was overthrown. He and his wife, they were, pulled out of the palace, and I saw the palace, and it's humongous. They were pulled out of the palace into the streets and executed. And the beginnings of freedom were starting there. And 10 years later, yet it was a communist country. 10 years later, there was still very little infrastructure that wasn't still old communist stuff. So at that time, for her to access the internet, there was a local equivalent of a local dial-up provider, and she had to pay. She had to pay to use the phone, the minutes using the telephone in her house, the minutes connected to the bulletin board or provider, and the by kilobyte of data. So she would compose emails and then connect and kind of burst them out and then, go back. And I remember when I got home from that, and during that time I was also reading the Left Behind series from Jerry Jenkins. And two things happened in my head. God showed me that, at some point, now, Curtis, you and our pastor and I, we've all talked about this, and depending on what faith tradition you're from, you may look at the rapture in different ways. God's going to, in the air come for his church and then come back later with his church after the tribulation. Some say that, we're going to go through the tribulation and then it's going to, the glorious appearing is all going to happen all at the same time. It really doesn't matter. In the books, the way they're interpreting Scripture is the rapture happens. A third-ish of the population is gone. The United States falls apart, and the Antichrist rises and all this kind of stuff. And when that happens, some believe that the Holy Spirit is pulled out of Earth, leaves Earth, and it's, every man for himself. And God impressed upon me, we've got all these pastors and teachers, we've got people on the radio, I got Charles Stanley, the people now, Greg Laurie and Billy Graham and these other evangelists and stuff. There's a lot of Christian radio out there and a lot of good biblical teaching and all this. But at some point that would all kind of like cease. And, if the Holy Spirit is pulled out at that time and people are still becoming Christians, they don't have the benefit of the Holy Spirit living in them to inform them. So what if we took all this great biblical teaching, because you could have a Bible church in a small town of 75 people, and the pastor could be a deep teacher like Charles Stanley or Jack Graham or somebody like that only these people know about. Well, if we're recording these things and if we're archiving them and basically building up a repository that until those computers go down is there, regardless of who's around, maybe we could leave a little bit of a teaching legacy and a training legacy to help folks out. And then if there was a way that we could also take what we're doing and try to get it out to countries that have really bad infrastructures, like very low bit rate audio that could just be podcast, and a 30-minute sermon could be a megabyte or 2 megabytes, something really small, but they could still learn from it. Then we're feeding people now. We're making a library. We're getting the gospel out. We're providing resources, doing all that sort of stuff. And this was in 1999 when I was thinking about this. And over the years, God has morphed that into instead of me being the one creating the archive, which was the direction I was going. I created YouTube before YouTube was ever a thing. I had a Mark.
Hear that? Dave created YouTube. That's what he says.
Yes,
Please
just
quote
like Al Gore. Just like Al Gore created the internet.
Yes, definitely.
What I did was Broadcast.com had recently been bought or been sold by Mark Cuban. And I thought, okay, this is, and this was when I was working at Dell. And I would go to Broadcast.com and watch old B movies, the Creature from 20,000 Fathoms, and the Killer Tomatoes from Outer Space, all those horrible B movies from the 50s. And I would have them playing on just a little box on my thing while I'm taking service calls and helping people reinstall Windows and do all that stuff. And I thought, this right here, if this is biblical and people could get, they missed their Bible study, they could do that, that'd be great. So I started putting together a website and working with my church and a couple other churches. The problem was ingesting everything. We were using video cassettes, we were using Hi8 cassettes, digital was starting to happen, digital video. But everything had to be ingested real time, and it just wasn't sustainable unless I had a whole lot of funding where I could set up, computers and camcorders or VCRs or whatever. And so, that just kind of went on the shelf. And then in 2011, God said, okay, by that time I was working in, I was doing content creation for various people. There was one of the original video podcasts was called Geek Brief with Callie Lewis. Came out, it's like Steve Jobs announced the video iPod. They, and then her and her husband at the time started producing a gadget show, Geek and Tech News or whatever, within a couple weeks of that thing being released and getting in people's hands. And in 2008, she and her husband hired me to produce their stuff. So I did several hundred episodes of that, and then they went through some life changes, and we shut that show down, and me and her and another guy started GeekBeat TV, and we created a production company in Addison, and we're, doing 3 or 4, I can't remember if we were doing, 3. We were doing 3 podcast episodes a week and a live show on Friday. We were live streaming. We were in the beta program with YouTube. We were live streaming on Ustream before YouTube started live streaming and stuff. And so we helped test and break and all that sort of stuff. Their things. So after years of doing all of that and thousands of hours of content, and Curtis, at some point, I remember we did like this rough count we were getting 1 million downloads per episode, so 3 million downloads a week, and then our YouTube channel had gotten to over 100,000 subscribers, and we started doing the math and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, cumulatively the stuff we did had generated, on various platforms, including, some stuff we did for BBC, like over 1 billion views or something. And God said, okay, everything that you've been doing, everything that you've been learning, and we were even teaching content creators at that time. everything that you've been doing, I want you to start taking all those skills and I want you to focus it at the church. Remember back in 1999 when you came home from Romania? And I went, oh yeah. And so that's where all of this started happening. And that's kind of my mission. Last night in our family Bible study, we're going through a book and we were talking about the difference between a responsibility and a calling. What we're doing here, creating tools, creating content, creating encouraging content, how-to content, discussion, thought-provoking discussion, all that sort of stuff in the church media space, and on how to take the tools that we have at our disposal, whether it's our phone, whether it's our $8,000 video camera, or still have this iPhone 6, whatever you have, taking it and teaching you how to use it to help amplify the gospel beyond the walls of your church. That's where all of this came from. So you have a ton of live audio experience and stuff, and I have a ton of live video experience. And I think this is a match made in heaven, man.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about like kind of the original vision you were talking about, it was a concept of compiling information in a space that then could be shared. Mm-hmm. But now it's come full circle, because now we're not talking about just compiling the data and the media. Mm-hmm. We're actually talking about taking it into the space where people are. Mm-hmm. It is the marketplace now. I mean, if you say, we want to share the gospel in the marketplace, well, I shop on Amazon. I consume YouTube, I consume social media, Instagram, whatever. And so what we're looking at now is taking some of the content that's out there and the content that's being created now by our churches and saying, okay, we want to take that into the marketplace, because outreach is different. And this is a whole other conversation that we can have. But the concept of outreach has changed. I mean, mm-hmm. when I was a kid, which unfortunately was not that different from when Dave was a kid, because I'm almost as old as him, but we would go and knock on people's doors. Oh, well, I'll never be as good looking. Just like I'll never be as old as you. So, right. Until you die, and we're not really going there. That's morbid. So anyway, but
wow, that took a really dark turn there really quick. Sharing this. Hey, that's how important it is to get the gospel out there, folks.
Yes, you never know when all of a sudden Dave's going to be dead. And so, right. Anyway, we go knock on doors. Well, now you go knock on somebody's door, you're more likely to alienate them than you are to engage them. And so, like if it's my next door neighbor, sure. But if it's just some random person in my city, then no. And so, but I can engage that person in YouTube, in social media, in a virtual setting of some kind. It doesn't replace, I don't believe anything digital can ever replace our actual physical contact with people, but it is becoming and has become the initial connection point. If you look at how many people now find the person they're going to marry on dating websites and these dating services. Well, 10 years ago, people made fun of that. People would joke about that.
Yeah,
but now,
bride.
Yeah, it's probably more common than not,
right,
that people meet in those settings. People of all different walks of life. They meet on social media. They meet through a dating site, whatever. And so it just shows you connection through this media interface that we have is really important. And so we're going to talk about not just the connection that we can get on YouTube or on Instagram or wherever, but we also will address the importance of the connection in the room, because it's still really important. And we can become overly focused. A lot of churches actually have, over the last 5 years, certainly since COVID, there are churches that are dedicating far too much time and effort on their streams and things like that they're actually neglecting what's happening in their room.
Right.
And unfortunately for them, that's not going to work out well, because Their real connection is in the room. Their outreach connection, those fingers that reach out, they reach out into, the world wide webs, and they touch people in ways so that we can connect in a deeper way. But there has to be some sort of personal connection that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we navigate that, I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of the live while still paying attention to the marketplace. And I think we have to be in both places effectively, and not neglect one or the other, but also be realistic about it. I know churches that have 30 or 40 people coming, and they spend lots of time and effort on their live streams, and they look at their statistics and they say, we got 50 people watching every Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have 50 people watching. You've got 3. It's just reading the analytics and really understanding it, and you look at how much time and money and effort is put into, those 3. It doesn't make them unimportant. We certainly want them to hear the gospel. Maybe they're shut-ins, whatever. Right. But how are we allocating our resources, our time resources, our financial resources, our efforts, all that kind of stuff? I think it's a question we have to be honest with ourselves about, because we can lie to ourselves about a lot of things, and it's not going to help anything.
Right. Well, and that's why with me, the live is just one aspect of what you're doing. It's the way we treat it at our church, it's more than just a fly on the wall, just a camera in the back of the room. We do try to do it in excellence, and we can go back to to the Old Testament where we can see that God wants us to use our talents and our creativity for worship, and to encourage and empower others through the talents and stuff, and just in the way the specifications for how to worship, in his specifications for the temple and things like that, the attention to use this type of a stone here, use this type of a garnet or something, for these or whatever. He likes that excellence and the creativity and stuff, but live is one aspect of ministry in general. What you do with the recording afterwards is just as big. I mean, because that is for me, my philosophy is that you stream your service, but then you take, the average person is not going to sit at their desk at work during lunch and do 25 minutes worth of worship, right? What they're doing, if there's worship going on, is in their earbuds or playing on their speakers on their computer or something like that. Air One may be playing, or they may have a Spotify worship track on or something. So that live worship experience, while during the live stream, while we can provide that for somebody, so that if they are home or if they are driving in the car in that moment, but they want to connect with their church and the people there in that moment and stuff, they can. But after the fact, the sermon, the Bible study, the meat of the message and stuff, that is something that for me goes into that archive and becomes material for teaching and training and learning down the road. So that, right now we could go back onto our church's YouTube channel, and we could go back through the Mustard Seed series that Jared did, or to the Who's Your One series or whatever that he did 3 years ago. Something like that. We can go back and go through that the meat there that we may have missed because we just joined this church or something, or What do I do? Greg Laurie is one of my he's one of my second tier preachers or whatever. Jared is my pastor, you're my pastor, but he's one of the other ones that I listen to and learn from. So it's playing on a television here. I go to his channel and I listen to what he did on Saturday night. And I go through a series or something like that. That's the kind of thing that we can produce here. In our own churches, no matter how big, no matter how small, with the tools that we have. You can literally create all of that if you have a iPhone 6 and take some tips that Curtis and I are going to give you to kind of maximize what that little device can do, maximize what your camcorder can do, maximize what your the mixer that you have, and the laptop or tablet or whatever that you have in the back, how to maximize those things so that you can wring the best quality out possible and deliver a product. Yes, it is a product. We're going to talk about it from a product standpoint and stuff, because that's what it is. You're creating something and putting it out there for people. But deliver a product that someone can consume, where they will be blessed and benefited by it, and not be distracted by the little issues or something, because they can't see the pastor because he's too small. I'm looking on my phone, I'm squinting. What's the pastor wearing today? Can't even tell. Is that blue or is that black? That sort of thing. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing and going over when we're doing our live. You and I have talked during the live show. We want to talk more like this, more. The live show is going to be more podcasty, as far as the content may not be necessarily as visual. Our videos on demand, the weekly videos, shorts, things like that, will have a little bit more of these. For me, I'm thinking our shorts are going to be like some moments from here where we're talking, a really important statement that we want to kind of hammer home for somebody. We can put it out there and let it just kind of stand on its own, as well as like some quick tips and things like that. But then the rest of the content is going to be a mixture of how-tos, deep diving on certain subjects. I'm going to be teaching, some editing techniques and skill like that. You're going to be teaching some audio stuff. I mean, we're literally going to go into the sound booth with, a camera and, Curtis, be able to say, here's the basics of EQing a microphone, or here's the basics of here's how you get that ring out of your room. I remember when you and I went and did a church in about 60 miles from here. The pastor walks up about halfway up the aisle, and we're like, okay, he gets right here, and we're getting all this feedback and stuff. And I remember going, that's how you get rid of that. As you said, it's like this. Here's the technique. That's all the kind of stuff that we're going to be showcasing here and sharing here. We're also working on our website. If you guys, the old timers that have been here for a while, and the ones that are saying, hey, welcome back, we have, if you go to churchtrainingacademy.com, that's the website. It is there is a version of it that is being created right now that is in flux, but that is where everything is going to be. We're going to have our membership site there. We have our membership site there. We will have our updated membership site there, where we're going to have courses. We're going to have some of these things that are subject based, are going to be sorted there and put together in playlists and workshops and all that kind of stuff, and even have a workshop or a training series on getting volunteers, because I know that's something that a lot of people deal with, is trying to get volunteers and stuff. So all that's going to be there. Be looking for that soon. If you want to connect with us, the easiest way is to go to easylivestreaming.com. You can sign up for our free guide for live streaming for churches, the easy way, how to get started. It is being updated. I'm working on a newer version of that. The most important thing is you'll basically get a couple of the concepts, some of the concepts down, and you'll get on our email list so that we can stay in contact with you, and as we are updating things, and if you already have a copy of that, by the way, and you're on our emailing list, you're going to be getting a new updated version of that as soon as I get it finished. So anyway, Curtis, I think this is going to be cool. I've been missing this. I've been missing interacting with everybody. We've had about 50-ish folks in here. We do have a question. Let me bring it up real fast. There we go. And I love that that's working. So SFC Network Ministries says, would you guys recommend Ecamm Live for streaming? Yes. I do recommend Ecamm Live on certain circumstances, right? One of the things that you'll learn about me is the right tool for the right job is what I try to teach, and I prefer myself cross-platform and ubiquity as much as possible, so that I can do it on a Mac, I can do it on a PC. Now, I'm using vMix here. We use vMix at our church. It is PC only. Ecamm is Mac only, okay? I have Ecamm, I have vMix, and I have OBS, which plays on both. So we will be covering those. Ecamm is really good. It's really easy. There are some things that are really intuitive. There are some things that I think, that's not the way I'm thinking. But I've also, been doing this traditionally for a lot longer. But if you go to getecamm.com, that's our referral link for that. If you go to getecamm.com, then you can try it out and see if you like it. Remember, it is Mac only. So if you've got an Intel Mac, or if you've got an M1, or I know the M2s, like for the laptops, some of that was just announced and stuff. So, try it out, see if it's going to work for you. It's nice. I mean, it really is. So give it a shot. Curtis, final thoughts?
Yeah. My final thoughts just tie into what you were talking about a minute ago, and that is like Exodus 35:10. They're building the temple, and they say, "Let all the skilled artisans among you come and make everything that the Lord has commanded." And so, like, we want to become as skilled as we can to build the tabernacle, to build the body of Christ up, and effectively do what we do, not to put on a good show, not to impress someone, but to use the gifts God has given us to glorify Him. And that's what we want to focus on as we move forward. So, yeah, that's what I got.
Absolutely. All right, one more comment. Let's see. SFC Networks just replied. Said, I find Ecamm is better for talk shows. Yeah, a lot of my friends in this space that are using Ecamm are doing it. The guy that I used to work with, Justin Nava, who you'll see on this channel a lot, and we'll have Justin on as a guest several times in the future here. Justin started at his church using Ecamm and loved it and was great. And he's, to my knowledge, is still using it at home on his live streams and for his productions and things like that. Ecamm is great. But your SFC Network Ministry says you're unable to adjust the bit rate for audio, and YouTube compresses the sound. Yeah, YouTube does compress the sound. I have not tried live audio myself. I mean, music. I mean, this is live audio, but music and stuff. I'm not sure. That's something that that we can do a little research on and see.
Yeah, the audio compression on YouTube, really on anything you're going, like any social media as well, is pretty bad when it comes to music. Just trying to deal with that, and what it comes down to is really, and we can look at this more in detail, but really working hard to test the edges of how far things are getting compressed, how badly things are going to sound, and saying, okay, this is just not something that I want to try to use then. Or maybe if I keep my gain settings down low enough, people may have to turn up a little bit, but then it's not squashing everything as badly. And so, it is a real challenge. It just really impacts how we mic stuff and what we run and what we choose not to run in a live setting. Because we upload, we don't run into a lot of those problems, but in a live setting, it really can be a challenge.
Yeah, and the platforms, when they receive the signal, they want to, they're going to increase the signal and compress it and stuff, because they want to deliver a good, crystal clear experience for the people that are viewing and listening. They don't want they don't want the audio dropping out and stuff because it's way too quiet and stuff. So they're doing things, kind of an average kind of a thing to make sure that everybody gets there. I remember when we started, it was you had to really push your limits up into red, into clipping territory. Very uncomfortable for someone recording or broadcasting or whatever, going, oh my gosh, I'm in the red and I'm trying to keep it from hitting the thing so that the signal is clean on YouTube, because they would take it and cut it by 6 decibels. So if you're sending out 0, they're putting out -6, and if you're for television recording and broadcast and stuff like that, sometimes like -6 is kind of like what you're mastering at and what you're putting out. And so if you're doing that, then it's like -12, and the person on the phone is going, I can't hear this, So all kinds of stuff. And SFC Network Ministries said when he uses OBS, he is able to make the adjustments he need. That's one of the things. Ecamm is really functional. It really is. It's great. It is a great tool for someone who is trying to get started, is not hyper technical. It's easy enough that they can say, okay, this, and I can put this here, and I can do that, and look, I'm live. That's wonderful. But you can't adjust the bit rate. You can choose, low, medium, and high, or let it figure it out. There are some things that you can do in OBS that you can do, in vMix to tweak and wring out, much better quality that I'm not going to say dumb down, they simplify low bandwidth, medium bandwidth, high bandwidth, and there's devices out there, there's software out there that does the same thing. They sacrifice fine-tuning for ease of use. Because the average person is not watching this show. The average person is not like you and me, Curtis, who are going to, try to get in there and increase the bit rate and, take it from 128K to 512 because we don't want as many artifacts in it and all this kind of stuff. We know what artifacts are.
Well, it's kind of the iMovie versus,
Yes.
Premiere conversation.
Right. Yep.
And I know people hate on iMovie, but iMovie is very functional. As a matter of fact, we'll encourage you to use it if you have access to it, and that's what you can use.
Yeah.
But it has lots of limitations. And so it's kind of that similar thing. It's really easy to use. It's quick. It's simple. It's Mac native, which means it plays really nice with Mac. Whereas anytime you have something cross-platform, you're always going to have just a little bit of tweaking you have to do. I mean, we had to do it just getting this set up today because I'm on a Mac. And so there is a different dynamic going on there. OBS is just a far more boisterous system that really does offer a lot more options. And that's why it's kind of the standard. That and, it's free. We like that too. So
yeah,
it really is the standard of what people are using.
It's very functional. It's not pretty, but they are working on that too, which is cool.
It is not pretty.
All right. Well, we are going to say goodbye here, and we will be back about 10 o'clock next week. We're going to start doing about a 10-minute pre-show. So we'll start at 10 till 10. And visit with everybody and stuff, and then do the official content, and then we can jabber with y'all as well after. So thank y'all for watching. Thanks for putting up with us as we are testing things, and with me throwing lower thirds up on the screen and trying to get vMix Social working. All of y'all that did that, go check out easylivestreaming.com. Get your free copy of Live Streaming for Churches the Easy Way. Know that version 2 is coming up very soon. And Curtis, I'm going to fade to black right about now.